Are we on? All right, well, welcome everybody to Tuesday Night Live, and I'm sorry that we didn't get Sarah's picture on there for the splash screen, but couldn't make it happen. But look, there's three of us. What a joy it is to have. We have a guest. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Sarah Sheeran. I usually get to be on this show with Father Ashmore when we do Housemates Edition.
That's right.
But tonight I was asked to be a special guest.
I love it. I love it so much. So I'm Father Kent O'Connor. I'm the pastor here at Good Shepherd Catholic Church in Shawnee, Kansas. And the other one sitting over there to that side, whatever we are.
My name is Michael Sheeran, and I am a co-host, husband, father, and retirement planner, I guess is something new, and guitar player.
Very good. Awesome. So, well, thanks for tuning in tonight. We have been going through the catechism for the past several weeks, and that's been kind of our modus operandi for a while, is doing the catechism and going through. And what we've been on now is we're talking about the commandments, and we have hit the commandment about honor your father and your mother. And I think people often think about that commandment simply in terms of, I got to put away the dishes. But the commandment is more than that. And this is where in the catechism, it talks about the domestic church. In 2204, if you're following along with the catechism, it talks about the domestic church. So what better way to have the heads of one of our local domestic churches here to talk about the domestic church. And I'm going to get a little bit quiet here. I'm going to put you on the main thing, and I'm going to let you talk a little bit about what is your experience? What is domestic church for you? And we can jump into the catechism if there's anything that jumps out at you to speak about. But tell us, how do you bring the gospel there? What does it mean to live that out? And I'll let you go for it. I'm gonna get out of here.
Wait, you said there was going to be questions. No, I think the first thing, if we're using the catechism as our guide in the nature of the family, the first sentence is the conjugal community is established upon the consent of the spouses. And there is nothing that happens smoothly inside the domestic church without the consent of both spouses.
That is true.
One of the things I think that's been really beneficial is having a spouse that supports me when I need to take a lead position, and sometimes when she's taking the lead, I try to support her and kind of funnel as many resources and just say, Mom wants this to happen. Here's how are we going to make this happen? Kids, do you understand the goal? Just so you understand kind of what the rest of our domestic church looks like. We have a 6-year-old girl, a 4-year-old boy, and a 2-year-old boy, Emily, Henry, and Tommy.
Keep us very busy.
Yeah.
Very busy. I would say you're right about us taking turns with roles a little bit. And I think that's also taken a lot of practice. Like when we were first married, obviously we didn't have a kid yet, but we're both kind of stubborn by nature and used to being in charge by nature. And so it's taken a lot of practice of give and take, of seeing who's in charge in that moment and letting that be the case. Like there's so many times where Michael's doing something with the kids and I just bite my tongue because even if I wouldn't do it that way, that's not the point. The kids need to know that whoever is talking in that moment is in charge, and that just takes practice and it takes humility and obedience, a lot of
Yeah.
obedience.
There's that wonderful phrase, you can either be right or you can be happy.
Yeah.
And we have been attempting with all of our stubborn might to be happy,
Happy.
even though oftentimes we try to find ourselves in the right category as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, you're talking about, conjugal love and how marriage is the basis of the domestic church. And when we say domestic church, if that's an unfamiliar phrase for you, that just means your home is the first church. Because yes, we have the global church, the universal church, our diocesan church, and then our own parish church. But it all starts in your home church is where that formation really begins. I don't know what else I was going with
Well,
that.
it's
Defining domestic church.
one of the things that the catechism says is that marriage and family are ordered to the good of the spouses and to the procreation and education of children. But notice it doesn't say to the procreation and education of children, and then if it's convenient, also to the good of the spouses.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things where oftentimes when Sarah and I are working towards something, we have to realize that both of us are trying to seek the good in the situation. And it is a naturally difficult scenario in order to, it's weird, your chair's taller than mine.
No,
I'm
sorry.
like having to, excuse me, let's fix this posture.
Mhm.
Thank you, Father Kent. I think your bar stool is rising. But the levitation, we just witnessed it, everyone. Isn't it great? But that's the goal, is that marriage is actually ordered to the good of me and the good of Sarah.
Mhm.
And oftentimes when Sarah is really kind of driving at a point and I kind of act as a detour on that can either be an opportunity for Sarah to grow in humility or an opportunity for me to practice some level of leadership within the family, or for me to realize I've spoken out of turn here. I need to catch myself. But man, being married is beautiful and wonderful and very, very hard, because it, just like everything worth doing, it takes a ton of work.
No, that's what I was trying to remember. What I wanted to say was that, yes, our role is to raise these children and to raise them well and to hopefully honor their mother and father. But if we aren't supporting our marriage as the number one thing, it crumbles. The whole domestic church is going to crumble. And so keeping that at the forefront, that even when we have all these things to do with the kids and you're parenting and you're this and that, and there's activities, really no activities now, which is nice. But all the things that come with kids, that can't take precedence over making sure our relationship is strong. Yeah. Which has been really hard. We haven't been able to go on a date in 8 weeks.
Yeah. Turns out every babysitter thinks everybody has COVID. I didn't get it. Sorry, COVID jokes. I hope those are okay here.
So in the catechism here, 2205, talking about the Christian family. Where are we here? Where did it go? Are you looking at it?
Yeah, we are, but you are not. You're a couple pages the other direction. Go the other arrow.
There you go.
There you go.
There we go. 2205, and maybe bring it up a little
There you
bit.
go.
So I think it's nice. The Christian family is a communion of persons, a sign and image of the communion of the Father, Son. It is called to partake of the prayer of sacrifice of Christ, daily prayer and the reading of the word of God, strengthened it by charity. And the Christian family has an evangelizing and missionary task. And so maybe I could just kind of ask you, kind of put you on the spot a little bit to, those are some good elements of what the domestic church is called to be. As the parish church is really called to facilitate prayer of the faith community there, and to be missionaries and to be the evangelizers, to care for others. Those are very key pieces that are part of the parish church, but it's also part of the domestic church. Would you be able to share a little bit about what you can do, what you have found, at least at this point in your marriage and family life, to be successful as moments of prayer or reading the Word of God, evangelizing, being missionaries. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, when we started dating, I mean, really from like almost day one, we started praying together in the evening. Like we'd be on the phone and we'd end our conversations with prayer. And that's really held through 8 years, 9 years later. Some nights we fall asleep before we get to that, but ideally ending us together, just ending our time and our day in prayer. And then when we put the kids to bed, there's always bedtime prayers, and they know it. They like reel them off faster than we can actually say them together as a family because they've kind of memorized like the routine that we use, which is fine because they know that it's a part of what we do.
But oftentimes
Mhm.
you have to call them out and just be like, okay,
Yeah.
that
You're not really
made no
praying.
sense to Jesus.
Yeah.
He likes to hear it slow. And Jesus didn't understand your words. So we're gonna
That's
have to
right.
do the whole thing over again. And they're like, all right, Dad. It's like auctioneer
Yeah.
prayer time.
But there's really nothing cuter than a 2-year-old who doesn't know what he's saying, like trying to do the sign of the cross, and like it's adorable.
So that's actually one of the best things is maybe we just had a really good day and it stuck well in his memory, but Tommy is the one that reminds us to pray before all of our meals.
He's 2.
He's 2.
We'll sit down and we'll start eating, and he'll be like,
And
Amen?
he'll
Amen.
go,
So cute.
Um,
I believe that he's going to be the priest. When he was born, I was like, he's going to be my priest. I'm
yeah.
recording it
she's
now for
calling
him
it.
to know
She's
20 years
calling it.
later.
Here it
She's
is.
really right.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we've really been blessed with is sort of a community of people that share our beliefs.
Mhm.
And it's super easy to let other people raise your kids and just kind of step out of the role and say, hey, you know what? This has been really fun, but every time I really start caring about it, I get angry, I get mad, I get grumpy. And I have 2 good friends, both of which say this phrase to me. I don't want to cloud their judgment with teaching. Like these guys grew up with me, went to Catholic schools with me, went to Catholic church with me, went through all the first sacraments with me all the way through 8th grade, went to Catholic high school with me. Good friends, good guys, doing their best, but they both have taken the approach, and this is a problem of, I'm going to raise kids that I want them to seek out the Lord and find the truth that they most connect with. And I'm like, so they won't know God. And they go, what do you mean? And I was like, how did you learn about God? And they're like, well, our parents. And I was like, well, okay, so you're just going to go ahead and shirk that responsibility to somebody else. And I would like to think that the guy who invented the hammer gave it to somebody else later after he died. And he's like, hey, this has helped me a whole lot more than that holding that rock. I smashed a lot of fingers, and he'd have all these like smashed up fingers, right? He's like, but this hammer, this has changed everything. I would hope that as we go along, we're taking the tools that we've created in our lives that have added value, made clarity, and we pass those on to our kids. And so if it's taken me a lifetime to learn how to do something, and my kids can pick it up from where I'm leaving off, wouldn't I be robbing them of all the experience that I've had up to that point by not teaching them what I've learned?
That's a
And-
great
and
point.
This is a question.
No.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the beauties also of our Catholic faith is that we go back so far, right? I mean, so do the Christian faiths to a certain extent, but also part of some of our Christian brothers and sisters is they sometimes can just kind of restart the wheel every time when they start their own church because they don't like this or whatever. So we're going to do it differently. We want to reject the saints. We want to reject this teaching because it's all just what's in the Bible. Well, if you do that, then you kind of have to like start over each generation, and you're not getting anywhere. The idea and the beauty of our Catholic faith, I think, is that we learn from the past and we learn the tools that have been built, and we build upon what was foundational there in the scripture, and everything really comes from the scripture, and anything that does not come from the scripture needs to be thrown out, but it really comes and develops from our teaching. And yeah, like the hammer, we have learned this, let's pass it on to the next people.
Yeah, I mean, we never would have been having this conversation if we use the approach that people are currently using to religion with technology. Like you and I would, like the next live stream would be you and I yelling at each other across an open field with a crowd of people around us. That would be the live stream that we would have.
Right. Can you even imagine having COVID? I mean, yeah. What would we even do? I have no idea, having a pandemic and not being able to reach out and do programs like this and masses. And
I think they were just called plagues back then.
The Black Death. That's true.
Oh, there's a plague going around. Oh, I hadn't heard. My village is over here.
Where's our town crier?
We're further upstream from you.
Well, to piggyback on what you're saying, I worked with high schoolers for 15 years as a youth minister, and I would have, over those course of those years, I had a few students that wanted to become Catholic that weren't Catholic, which was really great. But typically it was because their boyfriend was Catholic, the girlfriend was Catholic, their friends were Catholic. And so that was great. They were getting some exposure, but in every single situation where these kids became Catholic, not just like they hadn't received their sacraments when they were little, like they were either never baptized or baptized in some other faith and were not raised with any faith because their parents said, we want them to figure it out for themselves. But if you're not giving them any tools to learn, like you're talking about, they couldn't pick it. And so then they'd be excited and they would get the sacraments. But I know in 2 of the cases, for sure, they lost whatever faith that they had because they didn't have a community to support them. Their parents weren't practicing Catholic, so practicing anything probably. They didn't have extended family that was Catholic. They might have done it because their friend or their boyfriend was Catholic at that time, but they're in high school and life changes. And so 2 of these kids I know, now I know this was a few years ago, I can't speak for right now, had no faith anymore, right? And so part of anything that you're good at is because you have a community that supports you. If you're a wonderful athlete, it's because you're running with other people in that sport too, right? And you're being cheered on by your family. Or if you are a wonderful chef, it's because you're practicing and people are telling you you're good and you're surrounding yourself with other chefs, right? But if you become filled with this love for the faith and then you have no way to feed it, it's going to die. And so that's our job as parents. Like that is 100% our job, is to pass along this faith and anything that they learn, right? Anything that they learn to talk because they hear us talk. And so our 2-year-old that wants to lead us in dinner prayer doesn't know what he's saying, but he hears us say it every night, right? Or when probably a year ago, Michael decided we should start teaching the kids the rosary. And we do like a decade a night. Henry's 4, he doesn't really know what he's saying. And it's really funny when you listen to him specifically say the Hail Mary, half the words are wrong because he doesn't really know what the words are, but he can say it when it's his turn to lead the prayer on that bead.
I'm pretty sure it was a Hail Berry.
I mean, right. Hail Mary, it's so funny. They don't know.
I was like, Berry. No, it's Mary, buddy.
Right. But like we hit the rosaries, we have a little corner in our house that has a picture of Mary holding baby Jesus, a cross that my parents bought me. It's like a 300-year-old cross from Greece, which is like one of my favorite possessions. Michael got a kneeler from his sister that he refinished. We put in that corner. And there's a little key ring, not a key ring, like a little space for hooks for keys. Yeah. But we have rosaries on all those hooks and the kids know which colors are theirs. I mean, half the time they still fight over it.
Yeah.
But they get it down.
I used to have the green, but now that you have this color.
That's right. And with that one,
we're going down.
But they get them down, and most of the time it takes more time to get them settled than to actually pray a decade of the rosary. And half the time Michael's yelling at them to sit down and be quiet, which I get it. And then I kind of look at him and I'm like, they're learning just to be here. And it doesn't matter that they don't really know the words well. And it doesn't matter that they're still like running around in circles around the living room. Like, let them do that as they just get used to the prayer and get used to what this looks like. And hopefully as they get older, we can say, do a whole rosary or do 2 decades. We haven't done that. But with Emily being at Good Shepherd, it's great too, because then it's only reinforcing what we're teaching at home. That's one of my absolute favorite things of having our children in Catholic schools, is it's just reinforcing everything that we're doing at home. She doesn't have to go to school and then be like, well, they're talking about this, but you're teaching me this. Anything that can reinforce, any village that can reinforce how you want to raise your children is wonderful.
It's nice having, and this is even within like the guys that I'm best friends with, when we have that common third of we both believe in Jesus and we both are trying to get to heaven and we're trying to, bring up godly families and have a holy marriage and actually like share praise about our wives, not be like, oh, the old ball and chain, just be like, man, my wife made this dish the other night and I licked the plate clean and she was like sweetheart, aren't you trying to lose weight? And I was like, yeah, till you made this. And it's nice to have a community that is shooting for an awesome life around you, but it takes, there's this magician I saw on Netflix, and he said, what if you could unfriend somebody in real life? And he puts somebody in this like little box, and he goes, clink, and she just disappears, right? And oftentimes as Catholics, you can't be the person that unfriends, but you can also really intentionally cultivate worthwhile friendships around you, because there's no way I could be a decent husband or a good man if I didn't have other decent husbands and good men in my life upholding that part of me. Because men, as much as women set the bar and men rise to it, and the more ladies lower that bar, guess what? The lower the quality of man you're going to get. But even more so, when guys start setting the bars for themselves by having other guys that are pursuing the same thing, it's a game changer. It's very fulfilling and it's uplifting.
Very good. Well, I mean, you're somewhat grateful that Sarah lowered the bar for you, right, Michael?
Just want you to know, I had the high jump record at my grade school for about 6 months, and then another dude who turns out maxed out over 5'9". Okay, I can jump high bars. Okay, or I can just plow right through them and change the bar.
That's true.
Have like
those
a
are
Roger Rabbit over the bar.
Those are great thoughts, and just the life is lived. What do you got behind you there?
Oh yeah, you want to see how life is really lived in our house? There's the laundry. Hasn't been folded. I did it this morning. That's as far as I got.
It's clean. It
clean.
smells wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, I might just
Right.
It's
also
going to get folded.
Life.
I might also add, just from this occurred to my brain, is I think sometimes people expect like the parish church or the archdiocesan church to run really smoothly because, you know, we are a godly institution. We should be doing these things. But I mean, I don't have any dirty laundry behind me right now, but or clean laundry or whatever. But the parish church and the archdiocesan church, and it's in a similar way, is kind of similar to the domestic church in that way too. Is there's all kinds of messes going on.
It's life, and it's messy, and it's real people, and it's a real family. Try not to fight with each other half the time. Being in timeout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Licking your brother's shoes.
you know,
It's fine.
people always say stuff like a good shepherd is such a welcoming parish. And I agree with that statement, but the hardest place to show a welcoming face is when, Father Kent, you're rocking a homily and my kid is climbing up on my face and he's got me by the eyelid.
Mhm.
And Sarah's like, don't yell at him. Don't yell at him. And I'm like, I'm going to yell at him. And so if you ever see us in church and you're like, they have a beautiful family, please remind us, because those are the moments where we can always use some reinforcements.
Yeah.
Or if you're a grandma, or if you're a friend, or even if you're a stranger and you're just kind enough, there's a good chance I'll let you hold my boy.
Yeah. Well, after 8 weeks of not having been at church, they're gonna have lost like any remembrance of what they're supposed to do in church.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
It could be real bad
Yeah.
whenever
and
they get
I
back.
really want the 8:00 mass back because
This weekend.
Well, now that you mention it, hey, 12 o'clock noon, the link goes live. So you should have received a Flock note and a email, hopefully, about information about that. So it'll go live. I think it's loaded up on the website. Hopefully it is. I can have a word with Father Ashmore to make sure, but it's not there yet, I don't think, but there will be a link for a sign up Genius. So check about noon tomorrow. It should be live and sign up. So we have an 8 o'clock mass this week and a 10 o'clock mass. If I suppose there still could be time, if things go really fast, we could possibly or even add another mass. So maybe like a 5 o'clock Sunday.
See how that goes. Sure.
But we'll see.
Just because this is the honor thy father and mother, one of the things that's been uniquely beneficial for us is we come from two Catholic families. Okay. I didn't have to drag Sarah to church,
Right.
and she didn't have to do the same with me. Like both of our families are still practicing, which is kind of insane. Like
And all our siblings,
all of our
which
siblings,
is kind of
everyone's been baptized in the Catholic Church, and
everybody practices.
and the only thing that I can say that has happened throughout my life without fail is my mom has always, every single day prayed the rosary.
Mm.
And if she could, attend daily mass. And I've made bad decisions. Don't get me wrong. I think you have too. But the good thing is there's been reinforcements and examples set that we are trying to rise to. So as parents and as sons and daughters, we want to rise to the bars that are set for us. And so if you're hoping for your kids to have this dynamic prayer life or this dynamic faith life, and you yourself are like, well, I really want that for them, but I'm not going to have one myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost impossible to make that occur. So I think the biggest aha moment that I said to my mom recently was, Mom, you always respected my free will and let me make good and bad decisions, but you never stopped praying for me, and you always had an example of kind of like a concrete Catholic life. And my dad was a convert, and my dad is usually the one that's like, if I don't get my daily mass now, things just aren't right. And yeah, at the stage where we're at, we're probably not going to be going to daily mass because frankly, we're tired. We're really, really tired.
And you don't want our little kids at mass.
Yeah. But just the
but I think that just goes back to the community that you're talking about. When we come from two actively practicing Catholic families, that makes it that much easier to do our job. Like when we get together on family vacations, we don't have to worry about, oh, we got to sneak away and get to mass, and this is weird, or maybe we don't go. Like that's not a problem because we know that everybody's going to go and that we're all on the same page in that sense.
I want to do some due diligence on comments. Benita, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I think without the like live-in example of the faith, it's so hard to actually apply it. I think the first-hand witness is so much more valuable than the third-hand witness, you know, or the I read about a saint and he really affected me. No, I watched a saint be made. That's the kind of example we should be aiming for.
Our poor kids. So like for the most part, in pre-pandemic life, our evening, if you and I had evening commitments, it's usually at church. Because I help out with RCIA on Wednesday nights. You're going up for Tuesday Night Live and or Finance Council and or Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
What's it
the
called?
Financial
Peace for a while. And it got to a point.
Underground.
Oh yeah, but it got to a point where like I'd be leaving or you'd be leaving, and the kids, and you know, where are you going? No, why are you leaving? I'm going to church. I'm going to church. Are you going to church again, Mom? Like, on one hand, you're like, I'm sorry, I'm leaving, but I love that my kids see us that that's where we go to do our social things and our service things, and that's where we want to give back is to our church. That's an example for them. Like I remember my mom doing Stephen Ministers, which is a like ministry of presence for people who are grieving. She did that for years. My dad was essentially the volunteer lawnmower at our church for as long as I can remember. I learned how to to drive a riding lawnmower because I got to help him. You know, like that was a part of, and if our kids see that as a part of that's where we spend our time, that only reinforces what we're teaching them.
Obviously, the goal is to get to heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm finally at a place where I admit that regularly in front of my clients and in every area of my life, right? But it took a whole lot of, it's a risk to be Catholic. It's a risk to be Christian, but it's a risk worth taking.
What, any tips you give to dads out there on raising Catholic kids?
Find other Catholic dads. Find other buddies that you can go through it with. One of the best parenting systems that Sarah and I have learned a lot from, but haven't gone through the full system is Love and Logic. I was brought up in a you're going to get spanked if you get if you get out of line, because that's what my parents learned. And my dad's dad wasn't, his biological father wasn't there for him, and so shortly after, when he was young, his stepfather stepped in and was a really good dad. But I mean, spanking was only if you got out of line. But there's a lot of other really fantastic tools that can get your kids to understand natural consequences and just make good decisions. One of the other things that I would recommend is Manhattans. Those help as well, but not too many. Yeah. So if you need a good Manhattan recipe or a good friend that's a Catholic, reach out to me.
Very good. I wanted to just talk a little bit, just briefly, because it's kind of relevant as well, about some of the other things that the Catechism was going through here. Just because just in the current climate and stuff, I was just reading up on that, and I thought I want to make at least quick reference for folks. People would be surprised at some of the stuff about the family and society is in the Catechism at this point. And I just want to point this out for the folks, and I encourage you to encourage people who are watching to read this on your own when you get some time and maybe kind of reflect on it. But there's some really beautiful teaching about the family's role in society and the supporting of the society. So I just go like here to 2209, where it says the family must be helped and defended by appropriate social measures. Where families cannot fulfill these responsibilities, other social bodies have the duty to helping them. And it's a principle of subsidiarity. What can be done at the lowest level should be, but some stuff can't be done at the domestic church level, the family church, the family level. And so those are those social programs to help. I think this 2211 is really interesting as well, about the political community has a duty to honor the family. And there are it's more than just, one man, one woman, whatever. It's more than that. These are things that a family needs to have. So these little points here that it says down here about the freedom to establish a family, to profess one's faith, private property, medical care, security and health, respect, and protection from the dangers of drugs and pornography and alcoholism. So I think that's all very important. And just, especially in what's going on in our world today, I think that we haven't necessarily been respectful for, especially the Black community and the people of color community in a whole, of providing systems in our community, in our society, so that the people of color can also have these rights, these pieces of what it means to build a family. So I think it's a good chance for us to kind of read over the Catechism and what it says about that for people, and what the society should be providing when the family can't support it itself.
Yeah, there's an inherent, every person that calls themselves a Catholic, calls themselves a Christian, has duties both within their family of origin as well as the family of the church, and the society is relying on us to course correct when things are going on right now. So first and foremost, pray within your communities. And if you can, step out and take responsibilities or roles where you can be maybe a mentor to someone of the less fortunate, or step out. I like the phrase, all the desires of the human heart can be found in community. But oftentimes, all of those things are outside of our comfort zone. And just because there's another Netflix series out there that you can binge watch doesn't necessarily mean that there's not something outside your door that would be significantly more entertaining and rewarding in the form of relationship.
Joyce makes a good point here in the feed I see. It's so important that children see and know that their parents are so much in love with each other. And I think you model that very well, the two of you. And
I always knew that, right? And my parents had a good marriage, so I saw that it was fine. But it is so funny, and maybe it's because our daughter likes princess movies, right? But anytime Michael comes up in the kitchen and kisses me and hugs me, Emily's like, "You're in love. Daddy loves mommy." Or even if she doesn't say anything, and I'll look over at her because I just am so curious. She's just smiling, right? Like that. And you hear that in doctors and psychologists and pediatricians, whatever, they say this all the time, how important it is that your kids see this kind of love model, but it's so true and so crazy when you see it in person, like how secure that makes them. It's so true.
Very true.
There's a joy of courtship, not only for the hunter and the hunted. Sometimes one of these days we're going to get her to be the hunter and I'm going to be the hunted, but I'd have to ease off on the hunt. But I'm also setting the standard by which my sons are going to treat women. And so the way that I treat their sister and their mother cannot be different, right? It cannot be different in a poor way. It's got to be different in an amazing way. Like I'm setting this lady apart, and the respect that is due to her, and that I always have her back. The kids cannot pry us apart, and one parent is never going to be right because we are one. This is one unit. That's really hard, especially with, I mean, I just enough of the shows out there have kids that just, my daughter could teach a doctorate level course in manipulation, but
already
it's not in a bad way. It's just she's trying to get her way. Right. And we have to be this like iron team of, ain't nobody breaking this apart, girl. Oh, that's what mommy told you. Let's go ask her. I don't know if we should, Dad. She's really busy.
That's true. Well, you were talking, Father, about society, and it made me think of the quote. Isn't it JP2 that has the quote that says, like, as the family goes, so will society, right? I think I have it written down. As the family goes, so goes the nation and the whole world in which we live. Yeah. So that idea that if we aren't bringing up good children, if we're not bringing up holy children, if we're not raising our families in a way that are respectful and kind and humble and all those things, like the nation's going to go that way too. If we've lost those virtues and we're not instilling those virtues,
the other
it's like losing the hammer. It's the same thing.
Right.
The responsibility for, I don't care whose fault the problem is, who's going to take responsibility and fix it. Oftentimes, I know this because I've said these things and I hear other people say these things in the parish. Who's going to fix this thing with the church? Who's going to fix that thing with the church? And if it's bothering you so much, maybe God's putting that compunction, that like pain of like, I wish this was better, because he's asking you, hey, please do something about this. And I hope that I teach my daughter and my sons to not sit idly by when things don't go as well as they could. And I mean, I'm not good at sitting quietly.
Yes, I do. Well, I just want to, so I just might mention again, and Bonnie, I see that's an interesting point. I hadn't seen that little talk there. I think you're referring to that there, Michael, too. But I think there's all kinds of responsibility. We don't want to play the blame game too much, but I think that we can look at ourselves. I'm never gonna be a black man. It's never gonna happen. So I can only look at myself and I can say, have I been as good as I could be? And I mean, that's why we do an examination of conscience every night, I think, is that have I had some vestiges of, at the very least, of racism in my own life? And have I benefited from these systems? Yeah, I have. And have I done my part to kind of help those? If I have received these things, am I sharing the blessings that I have received? So that's just one thought there. But then I just want to, I mean, again, we're getting a little long here, but I also just want to refer also to, let me go to the share. Sorry, I didn't push share screen. It's very interesting that this is where in the catechism, it talks about the relationship of the family to the greater family of a society. And I just think it's, I just want to mention this about what are the roles and duties of citizens as far as the catechism is concerned. This is the section that you find it in. It's a duty of citizens, as it says in 2239, to contribute along with civil authorities for the good of society in a spirit of truth and justice and solidarity and freedom. And then this is, again, it's just kind of apropos for us here at 2242. The citizen is obliged in conscience not to follow the directives of civil authorities when they are contrary to the demands of the moral order, the fundamental rights of persons, or the teaching of the gospel. So that, I think it's just, and then I don't want to get into this too much because we could open a whole big thing. But then it also talks about, the relationship of the church and the political community. And it says, the 2245 right here says the church, because of her commission and competence, is not to be confused in any way with the political community. So the church has a role to help form because I think that's like mother church, right? So caring for the family, mother church has a role in society and teaching her children how to participate well in society. That's a really important piece of what the church does, but not to be attached to a political party or an agenda or whatever, but to care for all of the children. So anyway, I don't want to go into that too much because that's a whole topic for another day, but I do want to make reference to that this is where you find it in the catechism.
The 2243, with the riots that are going on right now,
right?
One of the reasons there is those aren't not being supported by the church is because right here there's following conditions have to be met in order for a armed resistance to oppression by a political authority. In order for it to be legitimate, it has to meet these 5 tenets. And the second one says all other means of redress have been exhausted. And we haven't exhausted all other means of redress. And that's the hardest part, is pursuing the truth and the beauty of Christ in the world requires us to kind of be these colorblind people that see all people as equal and to love them and to respect the free will that they all have, regardless of if they're coming from a different political opinion than us.
Sure.
Because, to the example I used maybe a couple weeks ago, my mom is just not a fan of Hillary Clinton. And I said, Mom, have you ever met Hillary Clinton? She goes, no. And I go, if you ever met Hillary Clinton, do you think there'd be any topic that you would agree on? Like in the whole of the human spectrum, is there anything where you'd be like, she makes a good point? And she'd go, maybe that women are important. And I'm like, yes, that's one. But the point is God looks at her and says, I'm going to give you the exact same free will that I gave to you, Irene. And I'm going to love you exactly the same with all of me. And it's hard as Catholics to be like, you are so the opposite of me, but I have to love you and I have to respect your free will if I'm ever going to be able to do anything with you in a civil manner. And that's hard. That's really hard to send respect in a place where we're probably not going to receive it. But that can't change that our responsibility is to love them through this. And that's the type of example that we need, and we've seen from our parents, and we've inherited that, and that's the only reason we're able to give that down and outward. And there we go. Long way around the bend, Michael. Whew.
Very good. Sarah, do you have anything else to add?
Pray for your kids. Love your kids. Teach them how to pray.
Wrestle with your kids.
Yeah, he's good at that.
Wrestle with your kids. That one helps.
All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to Tuesday Night Live then. And thanks we got a few good questions there and points. So thanks for participating. I never checked the tube. Did you ever check the tube?
Gene Russell, thank you so much for your comments. We appreciate them.
Okay, great.
It's a narrow path, right? About your guidance, how do they find it? I don't know, Gene. I do not know.
Well, so Sarah, would you like to lead us out in prayer then?
Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time together. Thank you for giving us these wonderful children that you've given us. Strengthen us to be the best parents that we can be, the best spouses that we can be. Help us to know how we can give back to you and to your church, and how your church can help us be the best domestic church that we can be. Thank you for this time together. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thanks so much. We will continue along with the through the catechism to next week, and then we'll see you in a couple more weeks when we talk about sex and stuff, huh?
Sex and stuff. All right. Guess I'm coming back.
That's still around? Are they still doing that? All right. Let's end it.
Let's end it. So let me, here we go. Let's just get it right back going.
Yeah, it's too much. She's seriously.
Oh, that's the wrong one. No, that's the right one.
You're welcome for sharing.
Let's see here. Come on now. There it is.
End it.
I'm trying.
End it.
I'm trying.